like, yeah, you can see when I had to raise the front wheel up, I was using a fair bit of transferring my weight back to try and get that front wheel lighter. So a little bit of body influence will help. But yeah, it's always just holding pressure. If I went too far up, I'd fall backwards. So it's like trying to create good pressure onto that obstacle. So I reckon we'll give this one a go. Obviously when I was rolling backwards, I really had to pull in the clutch completely to roll back. Your clutch finger, your clutch might hit your knuckles, don't worry about that. That's just normal. But yeah, try and use a lot of body. So yeah, we'll find it. We'll give that. Good to mix it up with a heap of different stuff. So yeah, it was good to see the balance was kicking in then with the trees. That's really cool. So that's going to lead into other things, and what I'm thinking is still working on our clutch work. But what I find, we can start to practice loading the clutch up a little bit more with the revs to be able to sort of jump off little obstacles like kickers. You do that a fair bit, like with your riding, you know, if you can see like a rock or something, tree root, you might be able to jump off it to clear a section where it's going to save you time and energy. So we want to work on actually practicing slipping the clutch, like loading the revs up to be able to jump, like a quick launch. So a combination of body and throttle control and clutch is going to get you over things. So what I find is, like, say I sort of set this up at a good distance where we can practice jumping it. So that first kicker, I want to try and jump over it and clear that next kicker. So basically, as I'm coming up to it, I want to be able to load up the clutch and throttle. So as I'm approaching it, I'm pulling in the clutch a fair bit, just enough so it increases the revs, but I'm still moving. So not completely in, but just enough. And as I'm approaching it, I squat. Because as I'm squatting, I'm loading the suspension up, and by the time my front wheel hits that little kicker, I like de-weight, and that's what gives me that sort of launch. So actually, you got to put a lot of body, you got to create like a big spring in your body, and that'll give you the lift. So it's something like we do in trials riding a lot. It's called a splat. So it's like when you have a big obstacle and you're actually launching off that kicker. So you have to like increase the revs a lot. Something. It feels weird like revving the bike so much, but it just has to be done. So yeah. So what we'll try and do is, like, we want to start creating shorter run-ups because sometimes we don't have the best approach to everything. So we want to start with, yeah, a nice run-up, get the feeling of coming in, slipping the clutch and jumping. Once we're starting to feel better and better, we're going to try and come up to it like with the short-ass run-up. Now you can hear the engines, like, engine revs increase, and that's what's going to give you that launch. When I dumped the clutch, say I was like balancing there, when I released the clutch, I just didn't dump it. It's like a little progressive, so I'm not wheel spinning. And it's the same with my approach. I'm gradually slipping it, and by the time it hits that front wheel, hits that kicker, it releases. So I'm not just at the last minute dumping it, sort of building up to it, to progressively slipping, releasing that clutch. So yeah, I'll do that one more time. Yeah, and it wasn't a crazy amount of revs, it was just enough to sort of gauge the distance. Yeah, first gear, I reckon, first gear, practicing first, because it's sort of, first it helps your timing a lot, second is good in certain situations, but for a lot of this stuff, first gear is the best. So we'll start to try and get this, I reckon. Start with your run up that you want. Like, we don't need a massive run up for a small kicker like that. We can just start here, come in at a walking pace, and at the last minute start to squat, rev it, and we just want to unweight as much as we can. So what do you reckon?
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Billy put a nice few scratches on it. First 5 minutes yesterday I went straight over. That thing comes up good. It goes alright, it's got a tubeless in it. It's got a 12-2 sprocket on the front as well instead of the 14. Oh, yeah. So that was first gear. I've been using second everywhere.
First, fair enough.
It's just heat hoppy.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Yeah. Oh, that's just
goes over the bank there. We want to actually start controlling ourselves backwards down that hill. Just relying on our clutch and throttle. So don't worry about your brakes. We just want to get better and better at our clutch. So I'll demonstrate that first little exercise. First gear, generally always check what gear you're in when you're doing hills and stuff, switchbacks and all that sort of stuff. We tend to have if we stall our bike on the hill, we tend to panic and grab a handful of clutch. We want to try and avoid doing that. If we stall it, we just want to leave the clutch alone and go for the brake. So we're not, because the engine braking will sort of hold you there. Sitting down, utilising the back of your bike just to get a bit more of a footprint when it gets real snotty. So trying to get a bit more weight on the rear tyre. seems pretty basic, but you do this on all sorts of hills and stuff, just controlling the clutch. And you know, say we're getting stuck on a tree root or something, you have to roll back a little bit more and then get a bit more momentum. So once you sort of get that, I'm sure you guys can nail that. Then we want to start lofting the front wheel up in the air. This is going to help control it. So I'll come up to the bank, transfer my weight forward and release that clutch really quickly, and that's what's going to pop the front wheel up. When I release the clutch quickly, I then grab it again so it sort of doesn't loop out. So it's a quick takeoff and then grab the clutch again, and we just want to keep our throttle hand steady so our front wheel rises, stays up in the air.
Surprised what you make it look real easy.
Yeah, it's just more or less building that, like, once you get that spot, you're not using any energy. It's just, it takes a fair bit of time to get that, but if we can work on that, that's going to be really good. I'm keeping my body back, I'm relaxed, I'm not going forward, I'm not hitting, like we tend to panic when our front wheel goes in the air and we go forward. We don't need to do that because we've got our clutch there. I'm trying to get the traction on the rear tyre. And I'm sort of looking at the front mudguard and, you know, trying to keep it as a bit of a gauge, like not let it drop in a certain, you know, don't let it drop too much because it's hard to recover again. So yeah, quickly release the clutch and then you're on the clutch again. So the throttle hand stays pretty consistent the whole time. It's not on or off, it's just steady.
Same with the clutch too, you just grab just the tiniest little bit, you know, because it'll just...
Yes, that's true, yeah. Minimal movement on the clutch.
That's why it's good to have the clutch straight off your knuckles instead of out real far because you can't control it as well.
Yeah, that's true. Alright, that'll be good. You get that one, Joe. twist, because your body will twist much better if you're on the balls of your feet. We don't need the rear brake for this. One thing I just find works really well is your inside leg is actually resting against the frame of the bike, which takes so much pressure off your arms. What I'm trying to do with my body position is to try and stay reasonably tall. So if anything, a little bit further back on the bike. We want to try and get to the point where our bars are, like not moving like this, just absolutely like just resting on it. I'm trying to sort of have a bit like a bow and arrow with my arms. Like I really want to have my elbow up and one arm straight. Change the position of your hand too, because sometimes you might feel very locked in like this, so there's no harm in actually switching your hand up a little bit to get a better twist on your throttle when you're in some of these weird positions. So just, you know, outside edge of your throttle, you're like a screwdriver, you can twist it a bit better. I'm holding the front brake on just a little bit, just to slow me down, just to hold a little bit of pressure, and just minimal movements with the clutch. Turning your head, you'll naturally do a better turn. So trying to look where you're going and visualize your line. But yeah, ideally we're trying to do it slow. Everything's trying to do it slow, so we want to try and mix it up going, you know, there's always going to be a favourite side, whether it's left or right, but it's always good to mix it up. So we'll try those on the flats around here, and Nick and I will come around and just see if there's any little thing we can add to it to make it, fine tune it. Once you feel like you're sort of nailing them, we then want to just practice going through these poles here, just go super slow, like without touching them. So we want to avoid like hitting our handlebars against it, because we just want to make it more challenging. We've got this little balance beam here. This is where we just want to ride over it without falling off it, ideally. Front brake, when I go across like a balance beam, I always look to the end of it and always hold a little bit of pressure on the front brake. And yeah, that one's pretty good. But you know, you can always add it if it's, you can always make it more challenging by trying to pause onto it, like sort of hold your balance on top of it. So yeah, I think we'll go back to those full locks at the start, and then once you're feeling sweet, good at that, we'll just try and work on just going across here, adding a pause to it, you know, do a bit of dancing around, and then we'll try and get through there without touching them ideally. So just try to be aware of your bar space. That's cool. I've sort of set this little square box thing on the hill here just to try and create pretty tight space to turn around. Trying to utilize the hill to turn around, so you're not wasting too much energy. And you know, if you can utilize the bank to your advantage to turn, you use less energy. So, and quite often this sort of leads into pivot turns and stuff. So basically, we want to try and just do this with a nice technique, really. So what we want to try and do is come in. We want to sit down, because a lot of the times when we're turning on hills, we are sitting down just to get more traction. Sometimes you are standing, it just depends what situation you're in. But we just want to come in nice and slow and just basically try and do the tightest turn we can. Tightest turn we can, then we want to switch our bars across. The reason I say we want to try and almost go past, I say like, if that was 12 o'clock, we almost want to go past that. So we can get our body weight to that high side quicker. So I really just came in and did the tightest turn as possible. And as I turned, I switched my bars over to the opposite side. Just means when I roll backwards, so I'm not worried about doing a pivot turn at this stage. Like sometimes if you do it really quickly, your front wheel just locked over a little bit. But what we want to work on is our feet transition really quickly. So I've already switched my foot over. See, one foot's on the foot peg. It's not down like that. One foot's on the peg and my other one's on the high side. The more you do it, you start to feel it like it can loft over pretty quickly, and I'm not focusing on, it's more or less just focusing on doing a tight turn. Yeah. But say if I didn't turn sharp enough, from this situation, so it's almost like you got to really commit, and it's going to be much better if you just commit to a real tight turn. So yeah, we'll try and just nail this one, and then so yeah, this is typically what you get in most events, like pro log sections, is yeah, logs and tires. So obviously we want to try and do it standing up. When we'll just talk about logs at the start. First of all, we want to work on, say we do get stuck on the log and we want to get over it because we got stuck, we just couldn't get over it. So with a log, generally with logs, I always try and look at it first, size it up. And that means when I size up a log, I'm looking where I'm going to place the front wheel on it. So when I look at the log, I've got to determine where I'm going to place the front wheel, because ideally when we do logs, we don't just want to wheelie over it, we want to touch our front wheel on it. So this creates good equal pressure on the suspension, which will help us get lift over it. So when I come up to a log, I'll have my finger on the clutch, just so when I pop that front wheel, I'll release the clutch. I'm aiming for my front wheel to hit it, like generally a rule of thumb is maybe 3/4 up or halfway up the log. So when I touch the front wheel, I'll give it another blip of the throttle and clutch just so I can get over it. But before I come to the log, I always try and preload. And when I preload, I always bend my knees forward first. So that's like with any wheelie I do, my knees come forward, and as I release the clutch, the knees come back. So everything's timed together. You don't have to go, we want to work on a good style, more like a double blip, they call it, with a log. You know, you're punching your front wheel into it. So first of all, we want to work on, say we do get stuck on the log, we want to get over it without wasting too much energy. So I'll be resting on the bash plate, and I'll have my legs on the log, and I'll build up a little bit of revs, and as I release the clutch, I'll pull up on the bars, and that's going to get my bash plate to rise and the rear tire to fall into the log. Once the rear tire's in there, I transfer my weight forward, so it's a quick motion. You're sort of like a seesaw rocking over. Yeah, basically, like if I was trying to push myself over that from that position, it would just be like fighting force against it. So my legs are on the log, I build up the revs, just before I go I'll stand, release the clutch and pull up on the bars, and it's like doing a little wheelie, and it'll just lift off the bash plate, and that means I can just transfer my weight over it quick. That's what we can try if we do end up getting stuck on it, but the main goal is to get over it without getting tangled up and everything. So we want to work on coming in, punching our front wheel, and ideally we want to tap our front wheel. We want to try and keep our weight back the whole time. We want to ideally try and land both wheels on the other side evenly, because that's a really good style we want to go for. It means we can progress onto bigger logs without our front wheel nose diving. So a lot of body work. So this is where it gets a bit tricky because I'm pulling in the clutch twice. This is called the double blip. So one when I release to do a wheelie at the start, and when my front wheel hits it, the clutch comes in again. So it's like, yeah, it's front wheel goes up. As my front wheel's about to hit it, the clutch comes in, and by the time my forks rebound, the clutch is out. So that's what gives me that spring. So yeah, it's the same sort of thing. Yeah. That was close, so close.
Oh.
Oh, you horn.
Wasn't very controlled. Yeah, go for it. take?
Always something in the way. Always something in the way. You roll back like about that far,
Yeah.
just a tiny bit.
Bit of run up.
Yeah. Just to get a little bit of drive before you hit that rock. Yep.
A little bit.
Yep. Then you'll go a little drop in and follow it. Pull you up.
Hello.
To.
Come this way a bit more.
Yeah, and then you can get a bit of run up.
So if I go that way,
Yeah, put your back wheel in here.
so I'm in the right spot, yeah?
Yep, yep.
Son of a bitch.
Good job.
Probably.
This one the front's likely to tilt up.
Yep.
So you can either, get off that and just creep it forward, standing off the bike, like that, just walking it forward.
Reckon it'll drive?
You'll get drive, just hope you're too aggressive. So when you get little ledges like this where it's a bit shit, what I'd try to do, it's like stand up on something, one foot on the peg, and basically, as I'm going to take off, I'm going to actually push down on the peg to get traction.
You make it get traction where there is none.
Oh, you did it pretty well. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.